This is Vera Papisova. She spent the last year dating far-right men in New York City for a story for Cosmopolitan magazine.
They're the most insecure men I've ever sat down with. It was really difficult to have some of these dates because they were so insecure, because they don't really know who they are and they don't know how to figure that out.
She said the men she dated got all their news and information from the so-called manosphere.
They did not listen to anything else. They're only listening to independent media, and they're only listening to men talking to men.
The manosphere is a toxic corner of the internet where angry dudes gather to complain about feminism, glorify hypermasculinity, and blame women for all of their problems.
There's no such thing as an independent female.
Most women have zero concept of money.
Females don't have independent thought.
And by the way, heads up, if you're blaming women for your problems, you're not that masculine, really, because a real man should be able to have women in their lives, even sometimes have problems with the women in their lives, and able to communicate them, work through them, and not act as though just their very existence is the reason that you can't get the life that you want. They should be separate things that could maybe sometimes assist, sometimes frustrate, but not be the source of your problems. And maybe it's the fact that you don't know how to relate to a woman, or maybe keep her in your life in any sort of mature adult way that is really at the crux of the issue, but I digress. The manosphere is a mix of wannabe alpha bros, dating gurus, quote unquote, and fragile egos pretending that misogyny is self-improvement. As Cosmopolitan writer Vera Papisova found out when she dove into the world of dating hardcore anti-feminists for over a year, and found out that these guys are not in fact chasing the self-improvement that they and their gurus act as though they are and pretend to speak of. They're in fact sprinting very much in the opposite direction.
One of these guys brought me to a political meeting.
And did they talk about politics?
Barely. They talked about, it was a bunch of men complaining about girlfriends and wives, regurgitating Andrew Tate type of advice about how to train your girlfriend, how to train your wife to be submissive. And so this group was supposed to be a political group, but they're talking about relationship problems. And the fact that that's what most of the time was spent on, you don't need to be a neo-Nazi. You need therapy.
Yeah, therapy would be a pretty solid idea, or a life coach, or just have friends you can talk to, maybe female friends, maybe male friends who give you advice other than dude, fuck her, bro, forget that girl, bro. Because being an anti-feminist is not edgy, it's super lame. If your personality revolves around hating women who want equality, that's not a hot take, bruh. It's a walking red flag.
I'm just a girl standing in front of the world asking for a president who isn't a rapist. Request denied!
The feel when we control your bodies. Hey, bitch, we control your bodies. Guess what? Guys win again, okay? Men win again. And yes, we control your bodies. Hi, I'm your Republican congressman. Hi, I'm your Republican congressman. It's your body, my choice.
Feminism isn't about tearing men down. It's about repairing systems that keep women down, just keep them from being treated as fully equal members of society. And if the idea of women being treated equally and having equal rights makes you feel personally attacked, buddy, that's not politics, that's projection. And you don't need to debate it. You need a therapist. You need to look yourself in the mirror and figure out why you feel so inadequate deep down that you think women, who are 51% of society, should be artificially kept down with less pay, with less equal treatment out in the world, so that you can have a leg up unnecessarily. Because a lot of these guys are also against DEI, which really just means let's try to equal the playing field, not necessarily give a leg up. And I can hear your argument if it's about giving legs up beyond where you're getting an advantage for being of a group that then hurts you, but that's really not what it is in most cases. It's saying they get an equal playing field. They should be considered. They should be paid equally, paid fairly. And if you're afraid to compete on an even playing field. Well, there's your answer right there. You're not hyper masculine at all. You should be able to play on any field and compete with the best. And if you need special rules and regulations to keep others down, well, you are not really a man at all, are you, dude? And so the manosphere is not all bad. Some of these guys have these podcasts are my buddies, and they're good dudes, a lot of them. Maybe some of them allow guests on that are far too skewed towards, sometimes a white supremacist point of view, and sometimes are putting ideas out into the world that are not helpful or healthy for us. And the link between UFC and UFC fighters thinking they are now intellectuals to host podcasts that then platform white supremacists, like has happened quite a bit. Maybe we could realize that getting your head repeatedly beaten, punched, and kicked in isn't the best way to lead yourself into being considered a public intellectual with your thought leader podcast the next day. But do you? Absolutely, you should be entitled to have a podcast. Or maybe just try not to make the podcast something so toxic that you're afraid to maybe have somebody speak about feminism and hear that side. Maybe you don't need to only talk within circles of similar thinking men. Because again, if you're afraid to hear ideas different than what you already believe, you're so fragile that you're not only not a man, you're not really a fully formed person at all. You're a child and you need to grow up. I'm Ben Glebe for Rebel HQ. You can follow me at Ben Glebe on Instagram and subscribe to my podcast, Last Week on Earth. Thank you.